Here. All right. Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Oh God, what's happening? Oh, Jared's got control. Guys, welcome to the first ever Black Diamond meeting where pants are optional. We are so excited to have you guys hanging out with us tonight, and we were kind of chatting about. So we had Andreya Goldman slated for last month. Obviously, that did not work out because she herself was self-quarantining. So we decided to, it's not just, we didn't want to just get people together as a group to just chat. We also felt it was a responsibility because things, I'll take this off now. Whew, it's warm in there. Whew. We also thought it was a responsibility that we had to kind of share what we've been going through with everyone at Black Diamond, both on the intermediate, beginning, and advanced level of real estate that's more locally based. So we wanted to appreciate all of you kind of coming in and joining us. We have a lot to go over tonight, but we would absolutely, if this is a Q&A, this is, no one here tonight that you're gonna see as a panelist has all of the answers to anything that we're going through, right? We're just gonna be going through what we have observed and some best practices, and what we feel going forward are some solid business practices to kind of help propel us for after this is all over. Because all I have to say, this is more part of my presentation, but you know, if we can last these next 3, 4, 6 months, which you should be able to, if we can last these 3, 4, 6 crazy months, it won't be going back to normalcy. There's no such thing as normal anymore. This is changing everything. And if you look at it as opportunity, which you should, we can all be in a position to significantly impact people's lives and have a lot of prosperity while doing it. So Jared, do I toss this to you now for everything, agenda and all that?
Yeah, so the agenda for tonight is going to be, hey everyone, the agenda for tonight is going to be a little bit different than normal. Usually we have introductions, we have a deal section, we get into the speakers, and then we have time for networking. Obviously with the current circumstances, we don't have that luxury. So it's gonna be a little bit different. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna have general agenda, some announcements, what the next meeting is. I'm gonna do a very quick overview of the speaker presentations, and then we're gonna go into the speakers. The goal today is we have about 5 to 6 speakers, and they will have between 5 and 10 minutes to go over their section. They're gonna give an introduction of who they are and what they're talking about, and we will go from there. So afterwards, we're gonna go through this PowerPoint right here. I'm gonna explain to you how you can ask questions. There's 2 ways, and you'll see in a second. And please ask questions throughout the presentations. We'll have questions during presentations and after presentations. So stick around, and hopefully you'll enjoy. So the next meeting, we're actually going to try to do a meeting every single week for April. The next meeting will be next week on Tuesday. And we will have another panel presentation with multiple speakers on different topics and how you can invest in real estate and what to look out for and what questions you should ask that you haven't asked yet. And be sure to join us. It'll be the same time, same presentation, Zoom link. We'll have registration on the website as well as all the other social media links and sites that we usually present to. Topic again is, COVID-19. So
same way to register, but not the same presentation, obviously.
Yes, same way to register. Thank you, Daniel, but not the same way. Same way to register, not same presentation. So tonight we have Andreya Berry, and this will be in speaking order for everyone who is wondering. Andreya Berry, actually, Nick, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I can hit to kick it off, and then I'll pass it off. Yep.
Okay. So Nick will be going first. Andreya, you will be going second. Brian, Lucier will be going third. Travis, thank you for joining us. We'll be going fourth. Andy Huntoon will be going fifth, and then Anne, our lovely hard money lender, will be rounding us off. Afterwards, we'll have Q&A, but again, we will be taking questions during the presentation, so please ask. When it comes to questions, how do you ask a question? So everyone's on mute, except for the speakers and the co-hosts. If you have a question, you have one of 2 ways of doing this. You can either type in the general chat, and we'll do our best to look for it and answer it and write it down. Or you can either ask myself or Daniel Stro, you can send us a private message and we will look at our chats and ask the questions when the speaker has time to answer the question. So that is the agenda for today. I hope everyone will enjoy themselves. And Nick, I will throw it to you to start us off.
Sounds like a plan. Jared, thank you guys so much. And again, for those of you just joining us, we're up to 127 participants. All right. Almost as big as our rehab presentation at the Waltham Black Diamond several years ago. I'm going to start us off. I'm going to try to go quick through these, but I figured this is kind of a well-rounded presentation on the changes that we have seen and some best practices that we have put in place. This is the oh shit, what now? On single family fix and flips and on the wholesaling rehabbing side. That was my segment today. So I'm going to go and just kind of go through this with you guys if this works. There's our normal disclaimer that everybody has, right? We're not professionals in any licenses that any of us hold. We're not acting in that capacity tonight. I'm a licensed real estate broker, but no one cares. And we're not acting in any capacity where anyone can sue us because we're all just counselors and we're not. Anyway, don't sue us. Here's kind of the bottom line as far as how I have boiled this down, right? COVID-19. There are two different impacts and effects here. We have a health impact, which is primarily at the forefront of certainly the media, right? The news media is definitely highlighting this one and hitting it very, very hard. So health impact, how can I keep myself and my family safe during this time? I also wanted to kind of position all of you on this call, especially being a Black Diamond participant. How can all of us on this call be a leader in these times? There are so many fearful people out there, and it's not necessarily their fault. The media is definitely doing an amazing job at causing fear and anxiety. I would challenge anyone here on this call, how can I be a leader in these times? I'm going to go through kind of the best practices, what we have done in our company, but we're here to and open to questions and answers, and none of us here have all the answers. The second impact is a financial impact. How has COVID impacted my business and where do I start and how do I prepare for what is to come? And I'll go through kind of what we have. And I share this image, I share this with my team. I want to share it with all of you here, right? There's the media and the news and social media. Everyone's doing an amazing job, pretty much scaring the shit out of everybody they can because well, I did a thesis on it. We won't go into it, but the thesis was they get lots of ratings. Whenever they do something negative, lots more people tune in because there are, fear helps drive ratings, which helps drive advertising revenue. Just keep that in mind. So here is the image that I shared with my team. What you can control are in the middle circle and what you cannot control are on the outside. And whatever you focus, not on the outside, you focus on what's in the circle. Your attitude, turning off the news, finding fun things to do at home, spending more time with family and kids, limiting social media, and having kindness and grace for everyone around you. We've had issues with utility providers because they're no longer going out and turning on utilities, but can you really blame them? Verizon specifically, I've been trying to get Verizon turned on in a couple properties, and specific my own property, and they have stopped all in-house services due to one of their own technicians passing away after 6 days later after a service call to a hospital in New York City. And it's horrifying out there, but again, just have that patience and have that grace with everybody around you and the people who were still working as essential, right? Assessing the business. This is something that hopefully is helpful to some people. First exercise that we did was how much oxygen is in the tank of your real estate business. Oxygen being if all your income stopped today, if you couldn't buy or sell houses as a wholesaler, if you couldn't rent out any more properties, if all of your income stopped, how long would you have to survive in your current business? What's your overhead like? A lot of you guys are solopreneurs. You don't have a ton of overhead, which is fantastic. So you're indefinitely set. But some of you have an organization and overhead and rent and all that stuff to pay. So what do you have for cash on hand, checking all your bank accounts? And do you have any accounts receivable due to you? And you take that and divide it by your burn rate. Burn rate is your monthly overhead. What are your critical monthly expenses that you pay just to keep your business going? Rent, mortgage, utilities, vehicles, payroll, critical tools that you use, and also your average marketing spend. If you're a wholesaler or rehabber, you typically will have marketing spend, and that should not be something you cut, but you can look at the tools that you use within your marketing and seeing if there's things there you can work out with your vendors or what you can cut for tools, but don't cut your marketing because you're going to need to keep that going. And then impacting on your business, we also then slashed our expenses to a core. We looked at this as an opportunity to literally look at every single line item in our P&L and what can we do to shave and cut, right? And you can do the exact same for your business. Mind the auto pays. What do you have that's hitting your credit card or your bank account on a monthly basis? That should tell you a lot about what you can cut out there, if anything possible. Are there monthly dues or subscriptions that you're no longer using? Are your utilities? A lot of utility companies are now working with business owners to, Comcast just needed a phone call and they waived 30 days of payments for our companies, all of them. And they were doing that as just a grace to help people establish themselves with the impact that COVID's having on the business. Car payments, rent payments, bank interest payments. If you have staff and payroll, you'll finally look to staff and payroll to shave the fat if there is fat there. Sometimes you got to cut the fat. And if you're in a place where you don't have a lot of liquidity, sometimes you might have to even cut some muscle out of there, but you have to be very strategic with how you do that. You can have a conversation with your teams. We've been lucky enough not to have this conversation yet. But if you got to it, have a conversation with your team saying, listen, here's our position. We're, we don't really know where this is going, but our income is kind of dried up. And our position is here. We either have to let 2 of you go, or all of you that we want to keep can agree to take a pay cut for now, temporarily, 3 months, but it could be 6 months. We don't know. Or if you'd like to leave, you can file unemployment. It's your call. What do you guys want to do? You can put that on your teams if you have to have that conversation. And then the marketing tools. So more importantly than what I'm about to share, I want to know what you have been seeing. Type it in the chat box as to what if impacts or effects that you rehabbers or wholesalers have been seeing in this market. A few things that we've been seeing on the motivated seller side. Motivated sellers, a lot of them are stalled. They're staying put. People that we had active deals with or we were about to get signed, they're in a holding pattern. A lot of that could be due to the legislation that just came out where there's no more evictions or foreclosures. In fact, if my understanding is correct, they've stalled all evictions and foreclosure activity until 6 months after the state of emergency has been declared over. So we've just started the state of emergency, I believe, a month ago. So it's going to be a long time before tenants and people who are having trouble paying their mortgage would have to even come back to paying that again. But that also means that there are some sellers out there that are more motivated than ever. They were looking to sell before all this happened, and now let's say they've already purchased their property elsewhere, or Florida or Georgia, they're retiring, or they're going into a medical care facility, and now they have to sell. So they're more motivated, and they want to sell quicker. Their timelines have even come up closer. They also don't want to meet in person. So we've had to adapt by moving into doing a lot of deals over the phone, but also doing a lot of Zoom meetings or Zoom walkthroughs, or having the sellers send us videos and pictures of their home for us to make rehab determinations via online video and photos, having them uploaded to Google Photos or Dropbox or whatever. Andreya's on the call tonight. She's going to talk a little bit about, on the retail side, she's going to talk about how she is selling homes from her couch. I'm going to let her discuss that more in depth when she comes on, but that is absolutely true for the investment world as well. You have to learn how to adapt and not be in front of people. People don't want you in there. They don't want you in their homes. So how do you adapt to that? And we found Zoom calls, doing a lot of it over the phone and walking them through contracts over the phone as well, or Zoom calls. This is a great time to go back to your old leads and re-engage them. If they were a no 6 or 12 months ago, and they haven't already sold to a competitor, or they haven't already listed with a real estate agent, now might be a good time to go back to your old leads, because they are going to be more motivated now than they were before, or they're going to be staying put. Either way, this is a valid touch. And you don't have to reach out to them and say, hey, we're looking just to check in with you on our offer. You say, I know we're all going through a tough time. You are on my list to give a reach out to and see how you're doing, see if you're all right, and if there's anything we can do to assist. That would be what our company's doing, with a focus on service to all the people that we're working with. And although we want to add this, when we've had this conversation with homeowners too, if they are a no today on their offers, the numbers are changing almost day to day, and we'll get into why in a second. But if it's a no right now, Mr. Seller, I'm just being honest with you. We have been we don't know where this is headed. And I do know that, our resale values are declining and the liquidity as we know it is drying up. And, our number right now is this, but I'm just being transparent. If you call us back next week, it might be something else. So it's okay if it's a no today, but I just want to be upfront with you. And I'm not using that as a tactic. It's just, it actually has happened. And it has happened to us where we had a seller come down from $740,000 on an ask down to 680, 625, and we still couldn't make it work. We're at now like 575 for that same deal because we have modified our criteria. And that's where, as we go through a couple more slides left, then we turn it off. I had a longer presentation just because I wanted to make sure I covered everything. Rehabber buyers, clientele. If the rehab, this is again for wholesalers. If you're dealing with rehabber buyers, you have to make sure they're using cash. If they're not using cash, you have a right to find out what they're using for their liquidity because you don't want to be left holding the bag with that motivated seller with your name on it. And their rehabber buyer all of a sudden was using, I won't say any names because Ann's on the line, but they're using a Wall Street backed soft money lender. And all of a sudden, all that money is now gone. It's dried up. They're no longer lending. And they don't know that yet because they were not in contact with their lender. Make sure they're using local lenders like Ann that you're finding in their local market that you know are still lending. You have a right to know who they're using for liquidity. And the numbers are changing day to day. ARVs are dropping, as I mentioned before. Contractor laborers, they're essential employees. There's a shortage of contractors yet again, even more so than there were before, because some contractors are choosing to self-quarantine and self-isolate. So holding costs are a moving target because you don't know where the what interests are going to be when they close, and you don't know what rehab is going to be because the labor is now in short supply. If you are not on a wholesaling side, but you're on the rehabbing side, many buyers are just waiting. Many rehabber buyers are waiting to buy. They're still trying to get rid of what they already have fixed up and maybe we're on the market or we're getting ready to go on the market and they're unsure of the market conditions. So they're not buying. They're just trying to get rid of what they have now. And many of them did rely on Wall Street or the financial market lenders or commercial bankers. I'm sure that, Travis will have some things to talk about on there. But a lot of them, as we've seen, are out of the game. If they're using national or Wall Street backed lenders, they're not lending anymore from what we are seeing. Experienced and prepared buyers that have a company that's been around for a while are definitely still buying. But if we use us for an example, we're more cautious. We've modified our ARVs down from about 72 to 78% of ARV, depending on the town, depending on the level of risk of construction. We're down to 62 to 68% of ARV, depending on the town, depending on the level of construction and the risk profile of that deal. And then, of course, what ultimately impacts all of us, wholesalers and rehabbers, are the end retail buyers. So we have not yet seen a stall here, mainly because there's still low inventory. People just aren't listing. Everyone's kind of stalled out on listing homes too. So because of the low inventory, prices are still stable. But there's no firm data yet. And typically real estate is a lagging indicator when it comes to a crisis or a catalyst, an economic catalyst like this. So we will probably see things change there, but we don't have any data yet to report on what that's actually going to be doing for the end retail buyer side. And it is tougher for retail buyers to secure loans. The criteria is changing day to day and ability to repay. They need to make sure they can still repay. So we're seeing lower LTV rates. Again, I'm going to let, I know Travis is more on the commercial side, but I'm going to let lenders speak to this more than us, but this is what we are seeing. But the bigger part of this is making sure you're aligned with a residential loan officer that can get those retail buyers closed that you know and are comfortable with, because we're seeing a lot of those deals fall apart. A lot of retail deals fall apart right now with their lending just not being solid. So larger rehabs or development are considered risky right now, uncertain market, and also an uncertain political environment with the election coming up in November. So we're keeping projects short and easy, or short and no large development, no additions, especially if there's a zoning or permits that are needing to be involved, because zoning right now, right, they're not even having zoning and planning board meetings in a lot of towns and cities. And what we've adapted to is velocity of our capital is now a lot more important than sexiness of rehabs. And this is a personal hit to me, because most of you who know me know I love sexiness in rehabs, but we've had to, we're selling inventory that maybe is not even totally finished, but we just wanted to kind of get our capital return done. And for those of you on this call that are still doing rehabs and construction in Boston, Somerville, or Cambridge, good effing luck to you. They've shut down all construction in those cities. You can't do a damn thing about it. And if you're stuck with a rehab like we are, good luck to you. Good luck to us. Good luck to all of you people. We are no longer doing business in those cities because of lots of reasons. That's about it. And for those of you who don't know me, just for the quick intro, we do have a home buyer division. We strive to buy over 60 deals a year in this area. We have a short sale debt settlement company with my partner, Marianne. She runs that for investors and real estate agents. We have a investor-friendly brokerage, AA Premier Properties, based in the Woburn area, but we go Mass, New Hampshire, and Maine. We have a property management company, Peak Performance, and we do some coaching and buying and selling too. Bottom line, though, here is strategy for newer investors. If you're a newer wholesaler, I'm going to tell you to hang in there. If you've got old leads, go through your old leads, refine your marketing. This has been the hardest market ever to be a wholesaler or rehabber and sourcing your own deals. And it's still really hard right now, but I'm telling you that if you can hold out for 4 to 6 months, and finally, when we get back to a new normal, the deal flow will start to open up again. Then you'll have another problem with liquidity, which is why it's good to kind of get your head around that right now and get your relationships established, like an Ann, like a Travis. But get your liquidity relationships on point. So hang in there, go through old leads, refine your marketing. And if you don't have it all figured out as a wholesaler and you're missing a lot of moving pieces, feel free to reach out or experience.
You are 5 minutes over.
What is it, Daniel?
I have to interrupt you. You are 5 minutes over.
5 minutes over. Okay, we're lining up. Rehabbers, if you're a rehabber, get rid of inventory as quickly as possible. Refine your buy boxes if you need to. Deals are definitely still out there, so don't stop buying, because if you stop buying, you'll be drawing up on inventory when everybody else will be out there kicking ass in, again, 3, 4, 6 months, depending. And align with lenders that you know are getting the job done. So communication is key. Communicate with your hard money lenders, your mortgage lenders, your private investors if you have them. And if you're a wholesaler, make sure you're reaching out to your rehabber buyers. If you're a rehabber buyer, make sure you're reaching out to your wholesalers to make sure they're still actively doing deals for you. Cash is flowing out of the financial markets and back into real estate again. If you can weather this health crisis and liquidity storm, there's never been a better time to be a real estate opportunist, and use this time that you have at home as an opportunity to revamp your processes, cut expenses, and take advantage of all the sources around you, including the Government CARES Act. We're not going to get into that now because we did another talk on that last week. If you guys are interested in seeing the replay of that talk where we had a couple CPAs on, you can feel free to go to our website is aarealestategroup.com, and you can click on the link. You'll see our talk that we did last week. That's it. I'm going to kick it off now to Jared. Is it Andrea or Brian that's going next?
Thank you, Nick. Andrea, you'll be going next. There was one quick question. I know you went over a little bit, but said commercial banks seem to be frozen along with most residential programs. Have you seen the same as from Galter?
I'm sorry, do the question again?
Commercial banks seem to be frozen along with most residential programs. Are you seeing the same?
Mm-hmm.
The answer to that, yeah, I'm going to let Travis answer that in his segment, but the answer, we have seen liquidity drying up in many places, which is why it's been critical for us to basically just get on that phone and talk to our lenders and make sure that they're moving forward. I will kick it off. I'm going to kick it off to Andrea now. Andrea's an amazing agent with us, but she has found a whole new strategy, which is adapting to where we are now on basically selling homes virtually. So I'm going to kick it off to her, and grab your beverage. Thank you all for, I know I went over time. I hope I provided some value, and feel free to put your questions in there. We'll deal with them later. And grab a beverage.
All right, Andrea.
All right. Jared, are you able to get it to my screen, or do I have to do that?
I think it's on yours right now, but I can pull it up if you would like.
Okay.
Yep, you gotta hit the share screen, Andrea, at the bottom, and then highlight your PowerPoint presentation when it brings up the window.
There it is. Okay. Perfect. All right. Let me just get this to. I'll just keep it on this one. All right. So, hi everyone. So virtual real estate selling system. I've actually been kind of using this for the last 10 years. It's definitely been the way with technology and how tech savvy our buyers are starting to be. It's been becoming more of a way of business, but with COVID-19, it's really fast forwarded this process to just being the way that I'm having to do business. My background, I don't know why it's not. Okay, sorry. So my background, I've been selling real estate for 18 years as a real estate broker. I've worked with Nick now for about a year and a half with AA Premier Properties, working with buyers, sellers, investors, managed 150 rentals for multiple owners while also selling, managing rehab projects for out-of-state and out-of-country owners. And that's really where my virtual selling came into play. Was working with my out-of-country owners, finding them properties, walking them through properties virtually, and then walking them through their projects because they really wanted to see the project from beginning to end, so they felt like they had a connection to it versus just handing a paycheck. So using those systems now and then converting it over to listings or acquiring a new rehab project as an investor, along with selling that product at the same time. So the big thing with doing that is how to sell virtually. So some of the pieces that I use is social media, Facebook live chats, Facebook video chats, YouTube video tours, Zoom meetings, prepping houses for for showings, along with 3D house tours being Matterport and professional photography and using e-signature. So in the end, outside of if I have to physically go out and do a showing, I don't touch or see the client at all. This is a hands-off situation. Let's talk about tours. Facebook Lives, marketing when you're going to be at that property so everyone can get onto a Facebook Live. The nice thing about that is that as soon as you go live, everyone in your friends list is going to see it, but they can share it. They can add people in, and then you can see everyone that actually came into your Facebook Live tour. It also allows you to answer questions on the spot. So if you haven't never used Facebook Live tour before, as you're on, down at the bottom, questions pop up and you can answer it right there on the spot or go back after the tour and answer them one-on-one. With the when doing a tour and walking through a house though, key is to go slow. Even though you physically can see the whole thing, they're seeing a small portion in their screen. So make sure you go from one corner to the other very slowly, because as you're moving the screen, their eyes may be concentrated on something in the corner, trying to figure out what the black blob is in the corner, and it's the wood stove, but because you went so fast, they're not catching it. And using descriptors. Make sure you're talking about what you're seeing in the room as you're going through it so that people know that there is a wood stove sitting in that corner and what type of tile might be or brick that's behind it, windows of the floor to ceiling, and also zooming up and zooming down, letting them see the floors and seeing the ceilings, because sometimes we've got cathedrals, sometimes we've got great wood beams that need to be shown. These are selling points, because remember, some characteristics of the house may not be a big deal to you, but it could be a very big deal to another buyer. At that same time, while you're doing these shows, ask vetting questions because people will tend to answer your questions. So ask questions about, what are people looking for in a house? What do they like that they saw in this house? Do they want to see something else? Or what area? And as they're answering those questions, there's giving you leads for either that house or a potential another property that you have. And at the end, after your tour is done and you have gone off from showing the house, you can go back into that Facebook Live and re-answer questions, but you can privately message them and then get their contact information. So it's a great lead source. You can get them to join your Facebook page and add all their friends to it as well. YouTube tours are basically like Facebook Lives, except for you can add more branding to it. So depending how tech savvy you are, you can just do the typical walkthrough and talk, or you can have writing on the video, or have your company branding up in the corner, or your business branding. So, and the nice thing too is that you can go in and you can see how many people have viewed it, how many comments there are, how many people have shared it, and then click on and see where it's been shared and if anyone's commented on those shares, and start grabbing more possible clients. Zoom meetings. What I love about Zoom meetings is, like us, I think the last count I saw, we had 143 people on it, is that capture of of people and being able to almost create a multiple offer scenario feeling when people see that, hey, there's 143 people on this, there's a lot of people commenting during this presentation. When you're starting to talk about it, if people see that someone's getting excited about a property, it's going to get them excited. They're going to feel like, hey, I need to concentrate on this more because there's 3 buyers that are paying attention to this. But you can also set the deadlines to when offers are going to be reviewed. So it allows to create that sense of urgency. Again, you can answer more questions and be able to find those hot topic points. Okay. 3D tours. I don't know if any of you have used Matterport. I've never used Matterport until now, only because I'm trying to avoid people just randomly coming to look at a house right now, slowing down that amount of contact in that house, the amount of risk that could be walking with COVID-19 coming into that house. Where a lot of buyers are very savvy, from a traditional standpoint, a lot of people are trying to envision their furniture in there. As an investor, they're trying to envision what changes they're going to make to get that next top dollar. So the more open space that you can show in that photo without distorting the photo. So fisheye lenses, hate them. Buyers hate them because they distort the size of the space. Try to use good angles to be able to capture the ceiling and the flooring along from corner to corner. But also highlighting. Your professional photographers are going to highlight that granite in the kitchen. They're going to make it shine. They're going to make the house look clean and crisp. But with the 3D tours in Matterport, when you first click on that link, it actually shows a layout of the house. It shows you basement, first floor, second floor, third floor. It shows you where the staircases are, and then it zooms you right in at the front door. And this is where people really get that nice 360 look, just like you were doing your Facebook Live tour, but they can go and step into a corner of the room and go back and forth. They can walk into the hallway, look to their left and see that there's a bathroom, look to the right and see that's the staircase to the basement, and it brings them to the kitchen, and past the kitchen could be another bedroom or an office, allows them to go up the stairs. So they can get more of longer detail into what work needs to get done and how the house is physically laid out. And then from there, I try to make sure that if a buyer still needs to get into a house, that they have done the 3D tour to make sure that they haven't eliminated this house and that they've done all their photo work. And prior to doing their physical showing, when we finally are like, okay, they have to get in it in order to get this offer, make sure you're emailing all the information for them. If there's any legal docs they need to sign prior to going, like for us, for real estate agents, they have to sign a brokerage disclosure. I want it all e-signed before. I don't want to hand them paper. I don't want to hand them pen that they're going to touch and hand back to me. And then prepping the house. So if you have someone that's still in it, for investors that are doing wholesale, that are trying to find another buyer, and the owner's still living in the house and is allowing you to bring showings, prep that owner. Tell them to keep every single door open. Block that door from, if it's a door that can swing, making sure the closets are open, make sure all the lights are on, so there's no need to touch the light switches, no need to touch the door. Make sure that the people that are going in are wearing masks and are still wearing gloves, because it's habit for us to lean against the counter and put our hand down or touch a door thinking, oh, I gotta shut it after, because there's something that we naturally do. It's just reminding people to, not touch. And the only physical door that needs to be touched is the one that goes into the property. Okay, so the do's and don'ts. Remember that if you are physically meeting, don't shake their hand, greet them with a smile. Take your time talking when you're doing the videos. Make sure you take your time and move slowly through the room. Make sure you show all angles. This picture down here at the bottom is a great example. This property actually had about 3 staircases to get to the balcony that I took this photo down on. So you can see the 3 different levels, and there's lots of angles that the staircases are going at. And sometimes that can't be seen in one photo in one direction. So make sure that you are showing all possible angles and features. Make sure to ask those questions and make sure to collect the contact information, because if they tell you there's something you want, you might come across another property. On the flip side of this, if you are still trying to acquire properties for wholesale and for rehab, but you're having that difficulty getting indoors, one of the things that I'm doing with listings is I get onto a Facebook video chat through Facebook Messenger. And at that time, I have them double tap their screen and it goes to what's in front of them and I'm not looking at them. And I have them walking me through the house and just saying, hey, I need you to start in the corner of that room, start from your right, slowly go to the left, ask some questions that you're seeing up and down, see how much stuff that's in there. There's still a way for you to get in that house and not physically have to get there. So you can use the social media tools to physically see these properties. I've listed 2 houses already by using this social media just in the last month. By being able to see through video chat and them walking me through. I had one property that she just did not want a photographer going through. So we talked about how to take those photos so that way I can market it. So if you have a wholesale deal and you can get them to take the photos, talk to them about getting it at waist height to shoot out. So you have even space between floor and ceiling. You're not getting more ceiling and more floor in the photos, making sure they're taking in the corners. Ask them if it's a house that's not a hoarder house, ask them to minimize as much as possible for you. So that way you can use those photos in your selling that wholesale deal. Any questions? I know that was pretty fast, but.
Andrea, we're going to do questions at the end, time permitting, because we are over the
Okay.
10 minutes. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
You're welcome.
All righty. Brian,
Well,
it is your turn.
okay. Done this before, so let me just do what I gotta do here.
All right, I'm just gonna get a drink then.
See you, Nick.
Grab me one too, Nick.
You got it.
I'm gonna do the share screen. It's giving me a warning, but I'm gonna go for it and we'll see how it goes, okay?
Go for it. Perfect.
Okay, you should see a big fat logo there. I've got about 2,000 slides, so we'll just get through this, okay? So I am Director of Bel Air Property Management, President of Northern Wisconsin Landlord Association, member of Worcester Property Owner Association, a few other associations. My wife and I, we own about 60 residential apartment units. Currently, we manage around 200 plus units, and I've been guest presenter here at Black Diamond and other organizations for a long time. So I was asked to focus on what's going to happen in the rental market part of this. I am a landlord and property manager, so I've been all over the forums, all over the blogs, all over all the different information out there. And the number one question landlords are asking is, what happens if my tenants can't pay the rent? So I've got a 5-step plan here, and I'll go through this one slide at a time. I did try to keep it short, so I'll be happy to take questions on the end. So 5 things to do. Let's get right into it. Have a plan. As a landlord, when you buy a property, you should have cash reserves anyways. You should not be strapped so tight that you are dependent on that rent coming in to pay the mortgage. And if you have a busted cabinet or somebody misses rent, you don't want to be digging out of your own pocket. So reserves are really key if you are looking at a rental property. I recommend 3 to 6 months per building. I know some of you just dropped your job, but I'm sure if you had that right now, you'd be sleeping like a baby. So yeah, reserves. You'll hear it all over the place, and some people say, well, Not for me, I don't need to do that, but I would really recommend taking a look. Just like Nick alluded to at the beginning, check your accounts, check your cash flow. What have you got to live on? Those are your reserves. And then don't over leverage your properties. You could probably go in, I mean, in the good old days, you may have been able to put 10% down and be at 1090 for your down payment and your equity and all that. I would like to see in this market more of a 30-60 where you are not over leveraged and you have more equity in that property than you need just to be comfortable. 25% would be a minimum right now. And you can do strategies like cash out refinance and stuff like that. And sure, great plan, tax-free money, so many reasons why that's a good idea. But where we are right now, currently in our daily situation, I would try to stay tight on that. Number 2, have empathy. Be understanding and kind. I've been attending church virtually for the past month, and my pastor hit it on the head. He said, we are all weathering the same storm right now, but we are not all in the same boat. And I totally get that. Some of our residents might be on a life raft. They might be clinging to a spare piece of wood, and one wave will take them out because they're living from paycheck to paycheck. Whereas some landlords have multiple properties, they have their reserves, they're all set to weather out this storm for 3 to 6 months, and they're gonna be okay. So I would just say have compassion and be understanding of the fear that's going through everyone right now. The news is feeding a lot of fear. Fear is feeding every alternate reality, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to be positive on all this and communicate quickly. 2 weeks before the rent was due in April, halfway through March, we had prepared a assistance report for our landlords, and they could go to our website, and it's there now at bellaire.co. It's in the red COVID banner at the top of the site. We prepared a white paper for all of our landlords to let them know about the SBA loans, tips and plans that they could be doing, letting them know that there is help out there. There are solutions out there. The worst thing you could do in a situation like this is just lock the door, close it, hope that this tornado is going to pass over you. You need to get this information out there for your realtors, all you other guys, your buyers, your sellers. Give them information. Be that person who's going to be part of the solution, and communicate quickly. Let them know. We did the same thing with our residents. We wrote a white paper for our landlords. We wrote a white paper for our residents. We let them know that there are these programs out there. I didn't know it, but 3 or 4 months ago when we launched our new website, we totally blew out our links section, and we put every resource we could find in there for housing assistance, food banks, food pantries, fuel assistance programs, Section 8, other types of housing assistance, legal, pets, animals, all kinds of stuff like that. We just wanted to be a solution for our rental community to get aid and assistance. And then about a month ago when all this hit, we just started going directly to the source of the government websites, the IRS, SDA, all these different sites, and we put those direct links on there. I didn't want to be feeding the fear and reposting Facebook stuff, because that's not where you should be getting your news right now. You should be going directly to the source. Now, there's a lot of resident and tenant advocate groups out there saying, well, gee, if the landlord doesn't have to pay the mortgage, then I shouldn't have to pay the rent. Well, that's not exactly true. The banks right now, the lending institutions will allow a forbearance. We actually have 6 of our properties under forbearance now, where some of them are 3 months, the others are 6 months out. So with the other reserves and things that we have, we're going to be okay. So we'll be able to weather through all that. But that doesn't mean I don't have to pay that mortgage. It's just like a student loan while you're waiting to get a job after you graduate. The government says, okay, well, you can't pay now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these 3 or 6 month payments. We're going to add it back into your principal. You're going to pay more interest, and your payments are going to be extended out a little bit longer. So this is going to cost you more. So it's not like we don't have to pay our mortgages, but we do get a little bit of breather to weather the storm. So at that point, we break off and we explain to the resident, look, you know, this is the situation with the mortgages. We do have to pay that. So we let them know that the rent is still due. We want to be fair but firm. They need to know that we can't just totally wipe it off the books. And we do have a couple plans we'll go through. It's hard to come back from behind. 1 month, you know, we might be able to work with that. 2 months going to be really hard. 3 months, we're going to have the hard conversation. And we want to be willing to work with our residents. Everyone was kind of grinding their teeth and wailing and worrying about what was going to happen April 1st. People thought, oh, gee, I'm not going to get 30% of my rents. And that's not what happened at all. We actually saw across a lot of the forums, like on Bigger Pockets, people were getting their rents on time, and a lot of people were paying in advance because they weren't sure what was going to happen. And quite a few landlords actually got this month's rent and May rent. There's one tenant we got that did that. They paid 2 months in advance. Net, we saw a 3% of people out of the 200 plus units, so that was like 6 people who had hardships because of COVID. So that's 6 people. 2 of them have already paid their rent. It's already done. 1 of them is in a hard spot, but we find that they're always in a hard spot. And then the other 3, we worked with them to accept partial rents, and we're going to work with them with the rest of the balance. So what can we do? We'll explain the options. We're going to waive any late fees right now. We'll accept partial payments. We're not going to jump into a summary process. If you don't know what that is, that's a lawsuit to evict somebody, summary process. We will still issue the 14-day notice because we're fiducially responsible to, I hope that's a word, but we're financially responsible to all of our landlords to collect the rent. And with slide 3, we explain that the rent is still due. So we have that hard conversation, but we want to work with our renters. So we'll waive the late fees. We'll accept the partial payments. We will accept credit cards. Our property management software will allow us to do that. The software charges 3%, but we're letting people go right now. We'll say, look, you know, we'll deduct the 3%. We'll pay for that as long as you can pay the rent. And then we'll restructure when the rents are due. I mean, we haven't seen this hit us yet, but when unemployment kicks in, I think it's supposed to be every week. Now, again, verify and check the source. I don't want to be giving bad mojo out there. But if they're getting every week or every other week or bi-weekly or whatever, have that conversation and be willing to restructure your rent. Instead of the full amount being due on the 1st of the month, can you work it out? Can you do every 2 weeks? Whatever will work. Just let people know that you care and you're willing to hear them and meet them where they are. And we've had so many of our residents, when they got that white paper, they couldn't believe that we took the extra step to give them that that information. And I see in their forbearance, yeah, all of our loans right now are commercial because we tripped the Fannie Mae wire years ago of how many loans we have. So let's keep going. And then rent deferral would be the absolute last option. I would try to do any other thing before I would do a rent deferral. What that would mean is somebody comes to me and says, look, I'm in the food industry, or school teacher or whatever, and I am getting no pay at all right now. So rent deferral program, we haven't had to do this, but we've got it as a last resort, where I would say to the renter, look, okay, I get it. April's not happening for you. So let's take April, we'll divide it by 10 or 12 months, and then in May, you'll pay your May rent plus the portion, that 1/10 or 1/12. So if your rent was $1,000 and we're dividing it by 10 months, next month or the next 10 months, you'll be at $1,100. And hopefully by then, these CARES and stimulus package will come down from the federal level into the state level. And we're hoping that by May, all of this is starting to trickle down, where we may only have one more really tough month that we have to worry about before the rents come in. So that would be the last thing I would do there. And if we did this, this is something I would only allow someone to do twice within a 12-month period, because then if you're 2 or 3 months behind, it's really hard to come back from that. So at that point, we'd have the hard conversation. We tell them, look, you know, when the courts do open up again and we can be in there for summary process, this is not going to go well. So what can we do to help you move out now before you're on the eviction database? I mean, I get it, COVID and all that, it's a terrible thing, but I'm still responsible. And the last thing I would say is to be part of the solution in all of this. We've been cooped up here. Well, most of us have been cooped up here. There's 4 people on our team. I've been going out just about every day. For the past 4 weeks, I was at 80 hours, 81 hours, 75 hours, and last week was 95 hours. So yeah, we're pretty busy. And we're out there. We're still doing what we need to do. We're doing the maintenance calls, and we've got a whole protocol right now. When we park the service van, every one of us, we have to have our mask, our gloves, our Clorox wipes. Before we even get out of the service van, we're wiping down all of the surfaces with Clorox wipe to make it safe for us when we get back into that environment. And then from the van, every surface we touch all the way to the work zone, we have to wipe down inside, outside door knobs, the whole 9 yards. We got to be respectful of the people's property that we have to go into to fix that ceiling fan or whatever it is that we have to do. And then the third part of this whole protocol is no one else may be allowed in the room with our service technician while we're doing the repairs. And then after that, we clean up all of our tools. We do everything we need to do to secure that area, clean down and wipe down everything we've touched. And then we do the reverse process, walking ourselves out of that situation all the way back to the van. One last thing I want to add about being part of the solution. We've been seeing so many of our cooped up tenants doing fantastic job cooking and posting wonderful looking food to Instagram. So we connected the dots and we just rolled out a cookbook program. It's a contest where we're inviting our residents, cook some food, post it on Instagram, put in hashtag Bel Air Property Cookbook, and you'll show up on a page. The person who gets the most votes at the end of the month, we're gonna knock $50 off your rent. You gotta be home, you gotta eat, you're gonna do it anyways, so we're in a position where we might be able to help. So if they wanna do that, be something to take their mind off of what's going on, and by cooking some good food, we might be able to.
Am I eligible to apply, Brian? Because I would like to send you some recipes.
Oh, let's see. Bel Air Property is our Instagram. And I'm sorry, you won't be able to win because you're not one of our residents, but we'll definitely give you the props if you want your Instagram on there. The rules are none of our friends, families, affiliates of Bel Air Property Management are allowed to win, just like when a radio show does their thing. So I'm going to get out of the screen here.
Brian, that's an awesome, awesome idea. Well done.
Well, people are human, and they've been submitting some really beautiful stuff. If anyone's interested in the cookbook, yeah, that's good. So some of you had some comments here. Forbearance commercial loan. Oh boy, that's moving fast. That's okay. Yeah, the last month's rent, again, that would be under the forbearance. And the last month's rent, typically our landlords hold that. So that's not something I have control over. If the landlord holds that, it's a conversation. All of this right now is a conversation. How bad is it? What can we do to help? Last month's rent, definitely could not use the security deposit because we would actually need a summary process court order to apply that to rent. So I don't want to be on that slippery slope. Yeah, cookbook. Yeah, great. Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to type the address for the cookbook, and if anybody wants more information about that, they can get their hands on it. I'll be happy if anybody wants to reach out. We've only got 4 or 5 recipes in there right now. We just rolled it out. But if you want to make a hamburger, I mean, I don't care if you want to open a can of Campbell's tomato soup and do a grilled cheese. If it'll win $50 for your family to get it knocked off rent, and you got a big Instagram following and they all vote for it, awesome, great. If I can help you, you're helping us. Let me type in that, and I don't know how much time I've got left, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on this call tonight. Did I do it right?
Thank you so much, Brian. Daniel, you're muted, by the way, because you were talking.
I understand now. We are over the time, Brian. Thank you, and feel free to continue to chat, and you know, people can ask questions, hopefully at the end.
Yeah, hey guys, if you have questions in chat and the speakers who already have spoken want to answer it, just type it in chat. I'm sure they'll try to get to it. Andy, you are up if you are ready. I think you're a co-host.
Yes. Yeah. Did I come off mute there?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I can do a share screen here, I think, right?
Yes.
Share. This one. Did that work? Share. Sorry.
Yep, there we go.
And got it. So, hi, everybody. I just got a little presentation I'll put together here. My name's Andy Huntoon. I'm with Trammell Crow Residential. We're a national multifamily apartment developer with offices across the country. I run our Northeast office based in Newton and cover kind of the tri-state area around New York up through Boston. So a little bit of a different lens than what some of the other speakers had, but I think probably pretty consistent in messaging on what they're seeing in the industry right now. So let's see. So I've been with Trammell Crow about 4 years. I've been in the institutional real estate space for about 15 years now. Before I was an apartment developer, I was at a pension fund advisor based in downtown Boston and provided, in the acquisitions group, I bought stabilized properties and I provided equity capital to developers to do ground up development of new multifamily product, primarily in Texas and Chicago. So just a little quick background there. Just to give you an idea of the types of products that we're working on and kind of what my lens into all this is, you know, again, these are larger scale institutional sized properties. We just sold an asset that was in Billerica back in December that we broke ground on in September of 2017. So that was 178 units. We've got one in Rentham right now down at Route 1 and 495. That's 240 units. We're both 40B properties, so 25% affordable. Under the Chapter 40B zoning is how we got these approved. On my Rentham asset, we're about 65% pre-leased and about 52% occupied. And I'll tell you, being in a lease up during this is it's a lot of fun. So it definitely stresses things differently than if you have a stabilized asset, and I can talk about that a little bit more. For other pursuits that we're working on, I've got a deal on the South Shore down off Route 3 that's entitled for just about 280 units. We're hoping to break ground on that this summer. We just closed with an equity partner last week actually on that one, and we've got a fair bit of drawing left to do before we'll be at a point where we have construction drawings that we could build off of. And I think our big concern there is just construction lending appetite right now in the current market. I've got another deal that's outside White Plains, New York, which is larger. It's 450 units spread over 2 large buildings. And so we're actually in a capital raise mode on that one right now, looking for equity capital, and I'll touch upon that one a little bit more in a few minutes as well. I pulled together just kind of a couple of quick data points on, is this thing advancing or is the slide not advancing? It is? Okay.
It's advancing.
It is, yes.
Okay, thanks. So I pulled together a couple of data points, and I think the first thing to note on market research forecasts is that they're always wrong. Nobody ever gets it right. What makes these things important is that financial institutions do use the data providers to make decisions on how they're going to allocate their capital and how they're going to price their capital given the risks that they think are in the marketplace. So it's kind of like a weather forecast if you're going to go out golfing. If it's forecasting that it's going to rain a lot, you maybe don't go. So I think that's kind of the bigger takeaway on what these things are. But, I kind of put some 07 to 11 data here just to kind of give a backdrop of what happened during the great financial crisis. And then this is the more recent forecast that I just got last week from, we use a data provider called Witten Advisors. And so for Metro Boston, they're forecasting 180,000 jobs lost for this year, and 135,000 of those coming back next year, and then another 69,000 coming back in 2022. So these are kind of drivers of value in multifamily is jobs. It's jobs and population growth. They're really the 2 big things for us. When you look at construction starts, you'll see that last year we had 12,000 units of construction start for the statistical area that they measured, 8,000 multifamily and just about 4,000 single family. They're expecting that starts are going to roughly half for this year. And, they'll start to pick back up again in 21 and then be back on track again in 22. The other one I think that's worth looking at is, these bottom 2 rows here, occupancy going to go down maybe 2% with about a 3% per year rent decline over the next 2 years. Again, I don't know that any of these things happened as forecast, but I think directionally, as you go talk to lenders and look to borrow money for multifamily properties or housing properties in general, they're going to be looking at these types of numbers. So I do think that they're important. But again, a really solid rebound is forecast in 22. And so, nobody really knows what the numbers are going to be, but I think if you look at it, contextually, it can give you some kind of ideas on what people are thinking. On the capital market side, as I mentioned, I'm out raising money on a big project right now. Some of the things that we're hearing from equity capital providers, and the way we do our business is we do a co-invest in all of the development deals that we do, and then we raise equity capital and debt for each of the projects, and so they're individually capitalized. On the equity side, the feedback that we're getting from the capital markets now is that for their existing deals, they're trying to figure out what their cash needs are going to be. And so, if you are a capital provider and you've got money in a construction deal that has been shut down because your municipality won't let anybody build on it, it's certainly going to have a financial impact on that investment. And that financial impact is probably that you're going to have to put more capital into that deal to allow it to get finished. And where you're going to run out of money is, your real estate tax estimates are going to be wrong. Your interest on your construction loan during your construction period you're going to have more interest than you forecast. And you're probably going to have more operating deficits to cover shortfalls on operations as well. And so, those are things that'll impact. So groups are going to have to put additional cash to feed existing investments. On lease-up deals like my Rentham one, we've seen our lease-up pace has slowed by more than 60%, kind of the first 2 weeks of March versus where we are now. We've seen a better than 60% slowdown in leasing traffic at that property. We were doing about 10 leases a week there. Now we're doing somewhere from 2 to 4. And so, it's a pretty meaningful change. We haven't seen rent declines yet, but I think that they're probably coming. We have pushed up our upfront concessions a little bit, to try to stimulate traffic, which is just another way of saying that we have cut rents a little bit there. And from a collection standpoint, we are off somewhere from 5 to 10% versus March. We've got some residents that we're working with on payment plans, trying to figure out how we're going to get them to pay. That's a pretty small amount, frankly, but collections are declining, which is going to also increase capital's exposure to needing to put new money into deals. And then for groups that have stabilized deals, they're looking at near-term debt maturities, or if they've got a test coming up on any of their covenants for cash flow or debt service covenants or any of those types of things, where you have a maturity or a test, you may have a pay down if your lender doesn't want to work with you on a restructure or a delay on any of those types of tests. For seeking capital for new development deals, the groups that we're talking to and that we've gotten feedback from in the marketplace is the equity providers are looking for extensions on everything. So, on the deals where they've already signed them up, I had one that, it was approved to get closed back in early January. They've been working on it for 6 months prior. They actually closed last week and wired us the money. So that was a big win for us. But they're also looking at their pipelines and they're culling deals. And so they're keeping the winners, and the deals that maybe were thinner, they're cutting those, and they're just not going to close on those. So that's the reason that you see a decline in starts going to happen, is because the money's just saying we're not going to invest in those deals. They won't get built. Some of the equity groups are saying, well, we're still in if you can get XYZ debt, and that XYZ debt might not be available. So they might not do the deal because you couldn't get unachievable debt, and they probably know it. So, some of the groups that we've talked to, they say, well, we love the deal, we love the real estate, we love the location, but we just don't know what rents to underwrite yet. We need clarity. And so, basically they're saying, let's just let this sit for 60 or 90 days, and then let's see where the world is, and then we can try to figure out if it still makes sense with whatever the world looks like when it all comes back and people can get back to work at some point in the near future here. One group I'm talking to, they're pretty honest about it. They're looking for free options to sign deals up where they don't have to put any money at risk and be obligated to do anything, and they're chasing higher yields because they think that there's going to be people that get hurt and there's going to be an opportunity to make more money. So I think there's just general unknown, and capital providers don't like to jump in too early. They like to try and be able to understand what the risks are before they put capital out. On the debt side, so far we've seen banks continuing to close on the commitments that they had made. In a couple of circumstances, we've heard about banks that have not followed through. I don't know if they had a signed LOI or whatnot. This is from some of my competitors that I've talked to. They are starting to put in LIBOR floor rates. And so even though LIBOR is really low, they're putting in a floor to keep the cost of the debt a little bit higher. Spreads have gone up a fair bit, on the cost of the debt. And we had been successful. One of the things that we like to do is for our construction loans, we like to get a 5-year loan term, which is longer than you really need usually. And again, on our deals, they're typically kind of 18 to 24 months to build them, and then another year plus to get them leased up. So they're just a little bit longer. But if you have a 5-year term before you have to get your first test on debt service coverage, if you were to go into a recession during that period of time, you don't have to worry about it as much because you've just got time on your side. So the banks are now starting to shorten those initial terms that they're willing to give, which it's actually not in their best interests, we don't think, because they're just going to put a test out there that they're not going to want to do either. So we'll see where that goes for them. Kind of impacts and opportunity, and what does it look like? Construction starts are getting delayed. On the projects that we have, we've told our, not on all of them, but on some of the projects where it makes sense, we've told our architect teams to just stop drawing and wait 30 or 60 days, and we'll get going again once we see what things look like. And so, that's going to lead to a slowdown anyway, just as things get pushed out into the future a little bit. As you've got uncertainty in underwriting with the capital markets, the capital is more scarce and it's more expensive. So, that's going to have impacts on things. The jobs that are under construction now, those need to get finished before the subcontractors are going to be willing to start taking haircuts on what they'll go to work for. So that's just going to take a little bit of time for some of the old pipeline deals to clear out. You know, things that we're doing now that I think everybody should be doing now, frankly, is you should be looking at your balance sheet exposure, and you should know what your capital needs are on your existing portfolio. You know, if your rents are going down, or if you've got a debt maturity coming up, or really anything going on at all, you just need to know how much you're going to need, and just assume that that money's no longer available for you for new business, so that you can kind of protect what you've got. You know, for your residents, you should talk to your residents. Some of our residents thought that there was a rent holiday and they weren't going to have to pay rent. So we had to go educate them and make sure that they understood that they did need to pay rent. You know, we've got to pay our staff, we've got to pay our mortgage, we've got to pay our property taxes. So most of the money that comes in the form of rent, unfortunately, does go out the other door to pay all those things. And so just trying to work with people, make them understand, you know, for the few folks that, you know, have unfortunately been financially impacted by this, trying to figure out what can we do to minimize the impact on them, and kind of work through a plan with them. You know, the last speaker, Brian, did a real good job on kind of walking through some of the things that you can do there. You know, contact your partners, both debt and equity. You know, if you've got something coming up, you should let your partners know what's coming up, and you should let them know what your plan is and how you want to work through it. If you've got a need, if you've got a loan that was in interest only during a construction period that was going to switch to amortizing at some point, if you're not ready to make that switch, you should call them early and get talking about it, because they're not going to want to have what is otherwise a good loan go into default. So they're probably going to be willing to work with you on that kind of stuff. But again, it's, if you talk to them, you communicate with them, your chances of having a successful workout on that stuff are going to be significantly improved. You know, you should be looking at your business plan, and you should make adjustments. Don't wait too long on the adjustments. You know, you've got overhead, you've got things that, you know, when times are good, it's easy to afford everything. And when times get thin, or if you've got deals that aren't getting done and your revenue stream is going to decline, you really have to look at rationalizing your business. And, you know, if you do it early, you don't have to cut down into the muscle. You can just kind of lop off a little bit of excess. And, you know, if you wait too long, you might have to start really getting into the muscle a little bit more, which is going to impact your ability to be able to do more business when we get to the next phase, which we think is opportunity. And so, you know, some of the weaker players are going to probably be forced to exit the market, or they're going to run out of money and not be able to get deals done. So, you know, if you've positioned yourself well, you should be able to take advantage of it. You know, during the great financial crisis, we saw that hard costs did go down. So construction costs or rehab costs or whatever you have for your different businesses, I think there's reason to believe that those costs will go down. It's not going to happen overnight. I don't know if it'll happen this year or not, but I think it probably will happen. You know, we also saw that some of our consultants were willing to work for less money just to compete for work. So, you know, if you're hiring an architect or an engineering firm and they're bidding jobs, they might be willing to bid those jobs for less than they were even just 30 or 60 days ago. And they probably aren't yet, because they probably still have enough work. But when that work starts to dry up a bit, you should be looking to try to figure out how you can reprice your jobs to get better buying, to bring your costs down so that you can be more competitive. And, you know, early cycle deals, and we're getting ready to go into a new cycle, hopefully, are the most profitable. So just be ready to execute. It may still be too soon for that, but, you know, we think that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity that's going to, you know, come out of this dislocation for everybody that's able to make it through it. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you so much, Andy. So I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in, Daniel. So next we're going to have Travis up, but I just wanted to jump in really quickly. After Travis, we're going to have Ann. And we wanted to see if anyone, if the audience would like us to go to Q&A after Travis and have Ann next week, or to go long and have everyone speak and then go to Q&A. So if you could just answer in the chat, would really appreciate it. Will help us out. But without further ado, Travis, I want to throw it over to you. And I believe I actually have a little presentation for you, just at least an intro.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I'll cruise at 30,000 feet here. We just got a deep dive from Andy, and a lot of his points were right out of my my checklist here. So I'm not going to dive too deep into those things. So thanks for having me here. It was a good reason to shave. I've been stuck at home working with my 2 cats and my wife for too long. So I'm glad to get on here and chat with you folks. You know, in the banking sector right now, we're really trying to get our arms around what an interruption of this scale, you know, looks like. We've never seen a landscape like this, and you know, this isn't a matter of a decline in sales. This is an interruption in business. So all of these operating companies went from full stride to stopping. You know, retail, restaurants, service industry, they hit a brick wall, and I can't recall any time, maybe in the last 100 years, where the economy has seen something like that happen. So, you know, the best way for me to describe this situation is an interruption. You know, we know this is going to spool back up. We don't know when it's going to spool back up, but we probably know what it's going to take for that interruption to stop, and that probably means a successful therapy or a successful vaccine. And you know, I'm not a scientist, but I watch the news like you folks, and we probably can say with relative certainty that we're not going to see either of those 2 things happen too quickly. You know, it's going to be months, if not you know, potentially a year before we see that happen. And so now we've got this landscape that's just full of uncertainty, and it makes the bank's job difficult. You know, when times are good, we do things like assess risk, and we do that in a market that we understand. To try to assess risk in this market is really terribly difficult to do. And Andy dove into that, and he spoke about what that means in terms of lending in depth. You know, we approve and we document complex commercial loans, you know, and right now that's really difficult to do. And if you guys haven't heard of this program called the PPP, you know, we've been doing this for a few weeks now, and it's been all consuming of the entire organization, and we're doing it remotely, and that's something that's really amazing. You know, we're leveraging technology that we've never used before on this scale. But just to let you know what that looks like, because this is really amazing. These banks, these community banks, are going to book probably the same number of loans in 1 to 2 weeks that we would normally book in 3 to 5 years in terms of loan count. And that's pretty shocking for these small institutions to be able to come together with, you know, the CARES Act was a 880-page piece of legislation that we had to process simultaneously with our attorneys, develop a process, develop protocol. Those protocol in this PPP program were not delivered to us until 8 p.m. In the evening, when the program was to roll out the following morning. So you know, I don't want to pat the community bankers on the back any more than I normally would, but you should go out and thank your banker, because these companies worked day and night to try to roll this program out to save these operating companies from doom. And for this group of real estate investors, these are the people that pay you your rent. So I know that you may not have qualified for some of these dollars because of passive income rules and so forth, but these dollars are going to end up ultimately in your pocket because we're helping out these operating companies that are paying you your rents. So, you know, when it comes to you know, what you can expect from the banking sector when the smoke clears, and I think that's probably going to be another 2 weeks before we'll get through this triple P program and the cash runs out, perhaps. Then we can dig back in and start looking at the things that we normally do, which is how are our loans faring? What does our portfolio look like? What are our customers doing out there? But you can expect that the bar to borrow is going to be very, very high. So from a community bank standpoint, you can expect that you're going to see things like loan to value are going to be looked at closely. If you're coming to the bank with a new deal, I don't think you're going to see banks necessarily modify their bank policy, but at least temporarily, they're going to be looking for some serious equity injections to make these projects work. In terms of interest reserves and payment reserves, for example, for construction projects, be prepared that those reserves are going to be much, much larger than they normally would be, because we really don't know what this, we can't see beyond the short term right now. The horizon seems even further now than it ever has before. And your best opportunity is to work with the bank and with the banking relationship that you've had. And if you're new to this game, I know a lot of folks are new to this game that attend these meetings. You've got to get out there and start to establish that relationship with a bank, with a banker, because when these situations come up unexpectedly, they could potentially be your lifeline, whether it's doing things like payment deferrals to help you along, or getting you access to programs like the PPP. If you have that relationship, you've got somebody that you can pick up the phone and call, and they're going to answer, and they're going to be there to help you. But if you're that borrower that is going to shop for the lowest rate and go from bank to bank to bank, you're probably not going to fare very well when the rubber hits the road with a situation like this. So that's just something to think about for you new folks, that in this climate, this is when it's important to have a banker that you can call at home to get answers to important questions. Something else I have in my notes here, and again, Andy kind of touched on this, was interest rates. And we get a lot of phone calls at the bank about interest rates. And I made a note here about 5-year money, and Andy made that point as well. Most commercial real estate deals are looking for 5-year money. But in February, a day before this disaster occurred, the 5-year money was at 1.85% at the Federal Reserve Bank. That's ticked down to 1.1, so roughly a 70 basis point reduction in interest rate. And you may say, well, should I be refinancing my properties? Are there opportunities there for me to save a few bucks? And the answer to that is not necessarily. And I'm going to set the residential properties aside here, but on bona fide commercial projects, the margin in these loans has gone way, way up. You're going to have to pay a premium to get them, because the surge in credit risk has forced the banks to pad these things out, because we know that the losses are going to start coming at some point. So, when you see things like the Fed reducing the rate, it may not translate into necessarily a lower rate so much as them just trying to prevent the rates from going up too much. Don't expect to see too much over the course of probably the summer in terms of rates falling out and going in and refinancing out your existing properties. And certainly in terms of cash out opportunities, you're probably going to see a lot of banks tighten their purse strings, make sure those LTVs are low, and they're not going to want to see you out there leveraging up your properties. Because once you do that, there's nothing left if this problem degrades any further. Challenges that we're seeing in the real estate market, again, all sort of surrounding uncertainty. We're seeing, deals are falling apart. They're being renegotiated. We're seeing some of our borrowers go out and renegotiate terms with some of their vendors because that work is necessary. or there are just job sites that are closed off to these vendors. So now they're scrambling to find a place to send their workers on Monday. So there's potentially some opportunities there to go out and strike some deals with vendors if you've got a job that's safe, that you know you can get people out to work on. Some other problems we're seeing is the responses from commercial tenants. And there's not much we can do about this right now. If you've got a restaurant as a tenant in a single-use property, you've got a big problem on your hands. I had a conversation with a restaurant owner today that's been in business for 40 years. And rather than try to do the takeout, he closed the doors, he turned off the power, he turned off the coolers, he unloaded all of his food products to food banks, and he's just trying to wait this thing out. Seen restaurants out on Route 9 that are going back to the property owner and telling them that they have no intention of paying them their $25,000 per month rent. You know, these are big problems for these folks that have these single-use properties. Seeing some of the same issues with the residential, and I know that Belair Property spoke about this a little bit, but you know, if you've got a tenant that was truly impacted by this, you may be trying to get blood from a stone, and the best thing you can do is to try to be there and listen to their problems, strike a deal where you can, get what you can from them to keep things chugging along, and kick the can down the road and maybe see if you can collect that later. So at this point in time, without knowing where the end zone is for this problem, that may be really your only approach to this from a workout standpoint. In terms of opportunities in this market, you know, somebody like Ann is probably going to be the best person equipped to help if there's an opportunity that you can grab hard money and scoop a property. I don't suspect banks are going to be throwing money at you for speculative projects at this point. So having, you know, just like I recommend having a relationship with your bank, you know, you also need to have a relationship with some of these other types of sources for debt, and being one of those. You know, with that said, I'm gonna bow out of this. I hope I was able to give you a little bit of a 30,000-foot view of kind of how we feel at the bank. We're trying to catch our breath right now from this PPP program. It's been tough, but we should be back online in a few weeks and back out and trying to be on the street and helping customers with more day-to-day you know, problems that they're facing.
Thank you so much, Travis. And just so everyone knows, Ann did not pay Travis to say that about Ann.
I was just going to tell him I owed him 20 bucks.
Oh, under the table.
That was supposed to be offline in a chat forum or something. Yeah.
Thank you, Travis. Great job. All right. So our final presenter is Ann. Ann, when is the last time that you did a solo presentation at Black Diamond?
It's been a while.
Anyway, I will let you go. You should have rights to share the screen. And just for everyone who's still around with us, I would say is the majority of people, we will be having a Q&A after. If you're starting to think about questions, please start sending them to me so I have them available. But without further ado, I will hand it to you, Ann.
Okay, can you guys see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, wait a minute. I thought I shared my screen. Oh, I did.
Daniel, what kind of wine are you drinking?
I just finished the bottle, my friend.
Ooh, Apothic. Very good.
Yes. Yes.
Checking.
All right,
Well,
I have lost. There we go. Okay. Screen sharing has failed to start. Jared, we have failed.
Can you
All right.
email? I'll pull it up. Just so everyone knows, we will be having this, I said this earlier, but we will be having this on social media, our Facebook, and also our website. So this will be recorded for anyone who has to bow out and won't be here for the Q&A or just wants the video.
Okay, can you see it yet?
No.
No. Okay.
This might be an age thing, and I mean, I didn't want to say that, but
But you did.
can I still get that loan?
All right. So in order for me to see my screen, because I have only one slide, but you guys can still see me talking, right?
Yes.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk to my one slide, and I cannot see the I can't see any comments, so any questions or stuff will come to the end. Okay. So, and this is pretty brief. I'm just kind of giving an overview. And so I'm going to talk about an overview of what I hear about other hard money lenders doing, and then I will then say what I am doing, which is of course subject to change at any given moment. So many hard money lenders have shut down altogether. I'm sure that you guys have heard that. Nick was one of the first ones to tell me a list of Wall Street money, hard money lenders that have shut down. And anecdotally, I'm hearing lots of others that have either shut down or they are saying that they're lending, but they're not actually lending. So they will tell people and advertise that they're lending, and then when you call them, they say, well, we're not really lending, we're just thinking about it, or whatever they're doing. I don't know. They've hit the pause button. There are a few that I have talked to that are lending and are reaching out to me to say, by the way, we're still lending, so if you're not, we'll take your stuff. Gee, no surprise there. But I only know of a couple that I know for sure are lending right now. I am lending. I am extremely conservative in my criteria, which I will go into a little bit more. Anecdotally, I have heard rates as low as 10%. Some lenders are staying with their initial rate structure, although I haven't actually heard anyone that's gotten a loan recently at their original rate structure. Other anecdotal stories that I've heard is anything from 14 to 18%. And I have heard the lenders that are staying with their original loan to values, or the lenders that were doing 100% funding, that sort of thing. Those people anecdotally are up in the stratosphere of 16 to 18%. I do not have confirmation of any of this. This is just what I'm hearing on the street, as much from my borrowers as from anybody else. I have increased my rates somewhat. We have not come up with a specific rate matrix. We just know that right now, for new to us borrowers, our lowest rate is 12%. Right now, but we never went down to the low rates that so many other what I call pseudo hard money or soft money lenders went down to. We never went down below 10% anyway. Loan to value has decreased anecdotally throughout the industry. It seems pretty universal that most lenders are down at 65% of ARV if they were ARV lenders. Most of them have increased their down payments, reduced their loan to value, etc. I have reduced our loan to value also to no more than 70% for existing customers, but it's very difficult to look at a deal and decide what 70% of what ARV that's going to be, because who knows what that ARV is going to be. So we're pretty much depending on loan to cost as opposed to loan to LTV, because it's impossible right now to determine what LTVs are going to be 3, 6, 12 months down the road for most of my deals, which is are mostly flips. We have increased down payments, and most lenders are increasing down payment requirements. We are looking currently at 25 to 30% of purchase price for our deals. we will modify that for some existing customers. So again, it's kind of like your relationship with your local bank. Relationships matter. So if we've already done business with someone, then we're a lot more likely to know their ability to deliver on a deal and would make adjustments for that person. It's critical, I believe, that you keep not only your relationships with hard money, but your relationships with your private people that provide your down payment funding. And if you don't have any skin in the game and your down payment funding is, say, gap funding from someone else, you may find yourself turned down much more frequently because people want to know that you have something to lose, not just someone else's money. So you will find, in general, you'll find fewer opportunities to fund new construction, condo conversions, additions, like Nick said. A lot of the same stuff that Nick is not doing right now is coincidentally a lot of the same stuff that we are not funding. So we're not funding new construction. We're not funding projects that have a long timeline. We're not funding development deals where they need to subdivide and build one house at a time for the next 5 years. That's just not happening. No gut rehabs and first-time beginners where this is their first deal, they will, in general, have a harder time getting funding unless they have a very significant down payment to compensate. I am hearing that hard money lenders are putting interest reserves, additional interest reserves into their requirements also. And that's a requirement that wasn't in there necessarily before. Our preference right now is for quick deals with about a 3-month turnaround or less. We like transactional deals. We like fluff and buffs where the construction is maybe a $20,000 or $25,000 budget. And we are not as enamored with deals where the exit strategy out of hard money is to refinance conventional, because who knows where the conventional refinance market will be in 6 months. So that's pretty much my overview. I made it short and sweet because I was going last and I didn't want to take too long. So here we are. Let's see if I can get back now. Okay, I'm back for questions, or we can go questions in whatever order they come up. So that's all I have.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Anne. Everyone really appreciates it.
And all the people that voted for me to stay, I owe you money too. Good luck collecting.
Just thank you so much to all the speakers so far that came on and presented and talked. You know, especially right now, we're very thankful, especially for the presenters and partners of Black Diamond that they come on and help us and everyone in the community. We're all in this together. So, you know, happy to have everyone, see everyone's faces. We haven't been able to have the general meeting, so it's nice to at least see everyone virtually. But I don't know if any of the partners want to add anything, but or speakers, but. You know,
I'm just going to say, I know we have another meeting set for next week, but remember everyone, this too shall pass. And with every crisis does come possibility and opportunity at the other side of this. So we are all in this together, as Jared mentioned, and truly appreciate all of you guys coming out tonight. While you're quarantining and having a drink and learning, hopefully we all provided some value tonight. We're going to be hoping to provide value as we move forward in this crisis. So, I mean, here we go. Let's all do this together, you know?
So Jared, are you going to do Q&A, or Daniel? Who's doing Q&A?
We are well past our intended end time, so if you guys have to go.
We were going till 8.
8. But
8.
Anyway, my point is that I do want to take some questions, so please use the chat to ask the questions, and I will read it out for you.
I had one from.
At this point, we can unmute people if they. Well, yeah. Well, whatever. Sorry.
Please, Nick, there is an early question about Comcast. You're saying that Comcast did do some concessions for you. Was it just a delay in payment, or what happened?
Yeah, so Comcast was one of the things we did, again, as more just because a bunch of our colleagues nationally were doing this, so we jumped on the bandwagon. We just didn't know how this was going to impact us. We knew that we were going to have a reduction in rents coming in. So we started calling all of our vendors early, and Comcast being one of those vendors, I just called them and said, hey, listen, we right now we are obviously all working virtually. So we're not using our office. We're not, and we also don't know the impact from lack of rent payments because we haven't had them coming in. This was late March. And Comcast, without even asking them what programs they had available, which is kind of what my default script was, what programs do you have available? They were just like, we just got a note from our CEO. We're happy to, excuse me, I don't know, somebody's calling me with some 80s hair metal, and I don't know how to turn that off. So they just said, by default, we're going to waive 1 month of all payments, and it's a gift. It's not even a deferral. It's just a straight up gift. And then that prompted us to call up, Verizon. These were commercial accounts, but they also were saying they were doing it for residential accounts if they called in and if they requested it.
Also on that, to what Nick said is, I don't know if anyone has travel credit cards, but those companies, Amex, Chase, a lot of them are giving away, free stuff if you just call and ask and say, you can't use your cards fully, and they help out with it. So kind of on the vendor track as well.
Nothing is free, Jared, but yes, incentives and government money are there. And if you need it, this is the moment and the opportunity to contact all your vendors and just seeing what programs they have. It's absolutely, these next 4 to 6 months are going to be hard. Everybody knows that. So they have opened that up for everybody. I suggest calling everybody, all your creditors.
I have a question from Brad Morse. It said, hey, Jared, are landlords eligible for the Economic Development Injury Loan Program from the SBA? I don't know if Travis, you'd be the best person, or who wants to take it, but from any of the speakers, Andy, Travis, and Nick.
What was his background? It was a real estate investment, his apartments, I'm assuming, something like that?
From Brad wasn't a speaker, but it just said, are landlords eligible for the Economic Development Injury Loan Program from the SBA?
Generally, no. Yeah.
Question for you, Travis, as well. You talked a little bit about the PPP, and by now a lot of people have applied or intended to apply and did not apply for PPP. How does that work for self-employed people? Because a lot of us real estate investors are self-employed.
Yeah. So they made this a little screwy. If you can imagine that the government put together a program and that it wasn't clear.
No kidding.
So with the self-employed folks, if you're reporting, so there's really two ways that you can report self-employed income. It can flow through your Schedule C on your personal tax return, or if you have a partnership, it could flow through a K1, and it would be reported on the second page of your Schedule E. The guidance on this is pretty thin, but what I would do is I would point you to treasury.gov. If you click a red band on the web page, you will find a list of PDF documents that have some FAQs and so forth. And underneath, there's a document there called the Interim Final Rule. And on the Interim Final Rule, you will find, I think it's page 10, section F. It outlines what is qualified. And generally, the way that we are interpreting that at my bank is as net income that's flowing through your Schedule C. Or I guess if you were you had K1 income flowing through the second page of your Schedule E, it would be the partnership, the partner's portion the net income, exclusive of any dividends, guaranteed payments, or distributions. Sorry, that was a mouthful, but that's the reg.
Thank you. I have one that says, I believe this is for Ann and just Nick in general, but it says 3-month turnaround. Is it even practical? Nowadays, it takes much longer to get permits. Can you guys talk about that a little bit? I think this is more around for you, Ann, for a 3-month
Yeah.
turnaround.
So let me elaborate on what I'm talking about a little bit. You can do a 3-month turnaround, especially if you're doing virtually nothing to the property, like just cleaning it out, okay? You also can do a 3-month turnaround if all you're doing is trash removal, painting, and maybe some carpeting. That can be done in a couple of weeks, depending on the project, and that doesn't need permits. That's the kind of stuff that I was referring to. Now, will we do more complex construction? Yeah, for the right borrower or for the right down payment, but we're just being really careful, because if a project is going to be 6 or 8, it's just such early days to know what's going to happen in 6 months. In 6 months, we might be able to get a better idea of what's going to be able to happen 6 months from then. But right now, it's really early days to project out what's going to happen. That's my answer. I'm sticking to it. Nick, your turn.
I would defer to what the lender tells me. No, I will. I agree. Who asked that question, Jared?
I saw the question. It was just a little ways up.
That's okay. I mean, I 100% agree with the question. It's increasingly difficult, especially now. Like I have a project right now in Somerville that's now completely halted per legislation, and it's killing me, right? It's killing me. So while I agree with it, there are certain deals, very, very select few deals though at this point, where you could get a 3-monther. Those are, of course, what we all want.
Yeah.
And if you have access to deal flow and kind of the off-market inventory, it is possible. They're few and far between. I'll say that. But with what we would go to Ann with and what we would go to our lenders with would be more of, they could come back and say, listen, all we have is a 3-month product, and that it is what it is. But we would go to them with still a 6 to 8 to 10 month product request and hope to get it done in, a 3-month time frame. But we don't know. It's all about, no one knows. And lenders want to be as conservative as they can be with their shorter times, and we want to be as conservative as we can be with our longer term loans. And it just is what it is. So you try to meet in the middle, or there's a rate, a pricing adjustment there.
And that's a good point, Nick. The difference between the amount of time it's going to take to actually get the project done and sold and the term of the loan can be 2 different things. Okay. I mean, no matter how many projects you had going, you could paint and carpet something in a few weeks. Would you agree to that? Under most circumstances?
Unless you're in Somerville, Cambridge, or Boston, yes.
Yeah, well, okay. But that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Just make sure you paint and carpet your own property. I see I see a lot of questions here about remote closing and what happens to attorneys. Are they doing closings or not? This is a general question. I don't know who is the most equipped to answer that question, but what do you see in the marketplace? Do you see problems with actually delayed closings because people don't do closings?
I think, I mean, I don't know if she's paying attention, but Megan is on Megan, real estate attorney and the sponsor for Black Diamond, is on.
Can you unmute her?
I
don't know if she's paying attention though. Megan, are you there?
She just said goodbye to everyone and left, so she's not there anymore.
All right then.
So Nick, I've had some closings.
Go for it.
All right. So I've had some closings, and up here in New Hampshire, I've seen it go 2 ways, where you have to go to the title company and the buyer has to go in first, sign everything, and then they remove them out of the room, and then the seller goes in. So they're separating it out. The other way that I've seen it done is everyone is being emailed the documents and they have to find a notary. So they have to make an appointment with a bank or the post office, and they go and get the documents that need to be notarized and then overnight the package back. So we're doing a lot of mail-aways more than anything.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, I know New Hampshire has passed the law where they are now finally allowing e-closings to actually happen, virtual closings, as similar to a Zoom meeting where a notary can be on the other side of the Zoom and the borrower literally has to show them an ID and they have to verify it's them. The challenge is, I guess, the title companies, it's the software technology that allow them to do that is very pricey, and they feel as though that legislation will be reversed once this crisis is over. So they're not investing in the technology and they're just saying, whatever, still come into the office and we'll do it the same way you just mentioned. You know, one party, then another party, everyone brings their own pens and, you know, that coughs in their sleeves. So Massachusetts has not passed a virtual closings to my knowledge, because we love attorneys in Massachusetts and everybody needs to get paid and attorneys get paid first.
I have a question for Brian. What is your suggestion if tenants don't pay rent because they know they can't be evicted right now?
Is Brian on?
Brian is on. Oh, there we go. Yep.
Thank you. Hey, so if they want to play that game, again, I'll just explain to them, you know, I know that things are terrible out there, and, you know, some people will try to game, but it's a game, really. I'm going to let them know, just as I said in the presentation, that the rent is still due. We are going to issue the 14-day notice to quit, and that's going to be the starting point for us to go into court with a summary process. So if they want to wait a month, 2 month, 3 month, 4 month, okay. By the time I get to court, I'm going in there with a judgment for 4 months, and I will explain to them masscourts.org does not go away. Once you're on there, it's the gift that keeps giving. Once you have that eviction, it follows you around for the rest of your life. So I will try to work with someone who's going to be in that position. If they want to, you know, be adverse about it, hostile and adverse possession, then I'm going to say, look, you've got 2 choices. You can work with me or you can move, and I'm fine to do either. Happy to elaborate if you want to elaborate on that question.
I also have something to add here. We did go through an eviction recently, and you know, this was my actually first eviction where we did not evict for non-payment of rent, but for smoking in the building. All the other tenants were complaining, and we did serve her a notice to quit, and she did quit. She did leave by herself. So just the fact that you cannot really use the courts today, it doesn't mean that you cannot start the process, as Brian said, and you know, they may actually find themselves that are not a proper fit for your building, and they will perhaps find another place. We did have also showings during this period of time, and we've had a lot of interest. So going back to what Andy said earlier, we are probably going to see, we are seeing probably a decrease in people interested, but there's still a lot of people. It's spring, so historically the strongest part of the a year for tenants. So people do move even in these conditions.
So on the New Hampshire side of this, just because of my background with managing properties, I just recently helped someone with an eviction. And one of the things is take a look at their rental application and see if their job is an essential job. We were able to get an eviction to go through here in the Sullivan County of New Hampshire because we were able to prove that they still had an income and that they still had the means and the ability to actually pay their rent, and they were using and abusing the governor's order. So that was one thing that the judge did pay pretty close attention, because there were a couple evictions that day, is if they had lost their job due to COVID, he wasn't evicting them. But if they were an essential worker and we had proof of it, he was allowing the eviction.
That's right.
By the way, so we have 2 minutes left of scheduled. I'm not sure if the Zoom will just cut off at 8 o'clock. If it does, thank you for everyone coming, but we can keep taking questions until 8 if everyone, all the presenters are good with that.
Yeah, I have one more comment on the Massachusetts housing courts. The actual courthouses themselves are not open, but the clerk's office is still open. You can go in there, you can get your summary process forms. We now have to do e-file, which, hey, that's great. You don't have to walk into a courthouse to file a summary process. You can still do all that stuff that you normally do. You just have to wait for the courts to open up again before you can follow through with the summary process lawsuit.
Thank you. We have a couple questions for Brian about how you got onto vacation so fast.
Well, I've been using my travel miles, and it's really great. I can be anywhere at a moment's notice, and now I'm back in the office.
Ah.
Now I'm home. I've been tooling with the settings in Zoom, so apologize for the distraction.
I think this is the last question. I don't know if it'll be able to fully answered, but I believe this is for probably Nick and Andy. Maybe Anne as well, or actually probably anyone who's just speaking, but how are you guys doing in finding your ARVs for 3 to 6 months out with everything being so crazy and hectic?
Anne, do you want to take it first, or in?
I'm not really attempting to guess an ARV. I'm just going based on cost.
Yeah, I can say what we're doing. So we obviously have modified our buy box to that 62 to 68% of ARV, but we are also we are anticipating a correction, not necessarily a huge crash, but a correction on pricing. Mainly right now, we're not seeing it, right? Like I said before, the inventory is still very low, so pricing is still strong because there's not a lot of inventory. But on our side, if we're going out 6 months, we just still want to make sure that we are the best product at the lowest price in that town, right? So we'll look at what are comps today, where are they falling today, what would be our ARV today, and then we would subtract. We're not doing 1% per month, which is a big number, but we're close to that. So if it's a 4-month project, a 6-month project, if we go down 4 to 6% from that number, that's kind of a rough rule of thumb we're using right now. If we start to see an active decline, like next month when we run absorptions in our towns that we're rehabbing and buying in, we'll take off like a 10% correction right off the top from a 4 to 6 month project. So if that helps, again, I don't have the answers, but that's kind of what we're going to be doing from our underwriting standpoint.
Awesome. Okay, well, I want to give just a round of applause. I know we can't really do that with everyone muted, to the speakers. Thank you so much for coming in. If I didn't get to your question, I very much apologize. We will have another one next week, so if you still have questions, come bring it. We might have speakers that can address it. If we can't do that, please post it in the Black Diamond Facebook group. If you're not on there, it's Black Diamond REI Insiders. It's not the Facebook page. It's the group, Facebook Black Diamond REI Insiders. We're really looking forward to keep doing this. We're going to try to do one each week for April. And thank you again to the speakers. And
thanks, everybody. This was awesome. Actually, it exceeded expectations. Jared, your running it exceeded expectations, and our attendance was fabulous. It was up over 150.
Yes, it was the level of expectations, but we got it.
That's awesome.
Anyway, thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, everybody.
Good night.
Pants off.
Thank you.
Jared, you have to end the meeting or else it's just really awkward and we're staring at each other.